Yes, is this Sarah?
Yeah, how are you?
I'm good, Sarah. How are you?
I'm doing well. Sorry about that. I think we call each other around the same time, but um how was there a press conference or something with
Y-
Sarah
yes,
Huckabee?
yeah. She was making some type of a jobs announcement, and I
Okay.
cover like politics and governance some. So
Okay.
the person that we normally would have covering that had something happen this morning, and so I was asked to cover it, and it was a kind of a minor deal, but you know how it
Yeah.
goes. Unexpected things pop up when you're in this business. So
Yeah. So I didn't realize you were still you do you have like a daily job with the it's like the Arkansas. I've seen your byline somewhere. I can't remember the name of the publication, but is that where you work daily? Because I for some reason thought you weren't working at a newspaper anymore.
no, I don't work at a newspaper. I work for a media company called Talk Business and
Okay.
Politics.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah, and I work from
That's
home. I live about an hour outside of Memphis, Tennessee, and
okay.
I'm not originally from Arkansas. I'm actually originally from Oregon. I'm a West Coast guy, but my wife is from here, and so her family was here, and she was real close to them. So when we got married, we just stayed here because it was just easier for her and them. And you know, the South is there are some parts of it I really like. There's other things about it I don't like, obviously. So, but you know,
Yeah,
I
yeah, yeah.
I make do.
No, yeah, I know that. I mean, I grew up in Florida and I worked in Texas, so we know that. Although I saw in your book about Deborah Sue that you were born in Lubbock. No, but you
I I
didn't
was.
live there very long. Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't grow up in Lubbock, but I was born there. My dad's family is from there, and
Okay.
so actually, and we didn't know this at the time, but Deborah is buried in the same cemetery as my grandparents.
Wow. Huh. It's crazy coincidences, no?
Yeah.
Um, yeah. Okay, well, let me just tell you about the scope of the story, and then if you're okay going forward, I'd like to record this just so I don't miss anything. Um, but so the story itself is about Liz. I lived in Lubbock for 4 years after I went back to grad school. And while I was there, I heard the story of Deborah Sue. So this was like in between 2014 and 2017. Um, and at the time, I thought about writing about it, and I reached out to Liz. So in 2017, but at that point, I wasn't writing for the magazine. I wasn't writing anywhere, and I couldn't really ever get anybody interested in it because there's so many unsolved murders. Um, and so it was only recently that I pitched it again. Now that I'm working regularly for the magazine, and so the story itself is, in some ways, what I think is interesting about Deborah Sue's story is not that I think it will get solved, although it would be great if it is, but just that it's the sort of chronology of it has covered so many moments in what we consider true crime. And so the story itself is, in some ways, thinking about the way that true crime, or whatever we consider true crime, how it sort of changed in the last, 30, 30, 35 years. But it's kind of told through that story of Liz. So with you and Jennifer, I'm interested in two things. One is I'm really interested in hearing more about like this crowdsourcing idea of, approach to true crime. And with you in particular, I'm interested in asking about the work as a journalist and how that might be different at all than your work, with some of this investigative work and sort of crowdsourcing. Um, but then obviously I know that was a falling out with you all with Liz, so I also want to ask questions about that, because anytime there's a falling out, as you know,
Yeah.
there are often sort of different sides of the story. So those are the two main things I want to ask you about, and that's kind of, did that give you a sense of like the sort of scope of the story itself?
Yeah, yeah, that seems. I mean, yeah, that's. I mean, I think that's actually an excellent approach. I think about like Debbie, you know, being in the carport. It's kind of like, and I don't know how old you are, but you know, like somebody my age, like growing up in the '80s, there was always this fear of, you know, like you're in the dark and there's somebody out there, especially for women, I think.
Yeah.
And just being in that carport and knowing what happened to her. Yeah. That sounds pretty good. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So do you mind if I record this then?
Yeah.
Okay. It just because I'm a slow typer. Give me 2 seconds. I gotta. Okay. Are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay. Perfect. Um. Okay. Well, so I'm curious just about your background. I mean, I know a lot about the work you did as a journalist. I've read your books, and so I have some sense of kind of how you got interested in being a book author and sort of writing about true crime. But I wonder if you could just talk to me a little bit about what you see as the difference at all between being a journalist, which you were at the beginning and still are now, but a sort of newspaper journalist, to being a book author, to doing this kind of investigative work that you're doing with Jennifer. What's the difference, or what difference do you see in your role in doing that work?
I actually don't see much of a difference. One of the reasons that I even agreed to start doing some of this type of work is because, as a journalist, mostly every day I would go out and interview people, and I would chase down sources, I would chase down leads. And I wrote a lot about true crime as a journalist, but I've written about everything. I've written about agriculture, business, politics. I've done stories with entertainers. And so, kind of like the skill set of a journalist is kind of a skill set that would lend itself to, doing this type of work, especially in a cold case, because the percentage chance of a cold case ever getting solved is really, really small, especially one that's as old as Debbie's case. And so I think that it's kind of the same. To me, it's the same type of work. When I'm writing a chapter for a book, or if I'm writing a story, for a website or a magazine or something else, I kind of feel like it's all the same thing.
And I guess I'm curious about your interest in writing about true crime. What is it? What is it that attracts you to writing about that as a subject?
People have asked me that before, and I don't enjoy writing about true crime any more than I enjoy writing about other things. I love doing feature stories, like I've done feature stories with like Holocaust survivors and stuff like that. It's years ago, I just I think that it's natural for any writer, if you're, especially if you're a journalist, that at some point you want to write a book about something. And and I thought about writing, because I cover a lot of politics and business and things like that. And I covered a case, you might be familiar with it, the West Memphis Three.
Yeah.
And somehow, and I don't know how this happened, but I ended up writing more news stories about that case than anybody. And I was in court covering it for years, and I interviewed Damien Eccles when he was still on death row and all that stuff. And so my first book, I thought, I was talking to some friends of mine, and they said, that you have a wealth of knowledge about that case, so it would make sense to probably write about that. And so that's kind of how I got started. But I tell people all the time, it's not that I'm more into true crime than I am into other things that I write about. It's just some things just pick you instead of you picking them, I guess, is the best way to put it.
Mm-hmm. Um, well, so what about this idea of the crowdsourcing or investigation that involves crowdsourcing? Does, maybe the work doesn't feel any different, but does your relationship with readers or the audience feel different from that perspective?
A little bit, because crowdsourcing, and I can give an example. So the case that brought Jennifer and I together was the Rebecca Gould murder case. And in that case, we started a Facebook page, and a lot of people would join. And, the guy that eventually confessed to her murder, he joined our page pretty early on. And he, we knew this guy. His name was William Miller. He was living in the Philippines. And through crowdsourcing, we were one of the people on our page. She's a genealogist, and she contacted me pretty early on and said, "Hey, just so you know, this guy is the first cousin of the sort of love interest that Rebecca. She was at his house. I'm sure you're probably a little bit familiar with that case, and." This was the first cousin because it was it wasn't odd. I mean, you start a Facebook page and you get people join quite literally from all over the world, but this guy was pretty active. He was commenting a lot, messaging. I mean, he stood out from that perspective, and so we knew early on. So instantly, the value of crowdsourcing, was she proved the value of it. And then in other things that I've worked on, through the years, even as a journalist, I've actually created a pretty good network of people that, like if I'm friends with a knife expert. So if we're working on a stabbing case, or if I'm writing about one, I have that expertise I can put into my, my reporting. And so, one of the ladies that's in our crowdsourcing group, she's a social worker, and she's very good at interviewing people because that's her skill set. And so it's not uncommon for her to do an interview and things like that. Anyway, that's the value of it. I actually feel closer to some of the people that I write that who were our former readers or our current readers, because sometimes they'll just message me out of the blue. Like in the last couple of minutes, I just got a text message from a lady who wants to chat with me about something that she's got going on right now. So I'm not sure if that's the best way to answer that, but
well, and when you say wants to chat about something, is it like something related to a crime or a case, or just about her life in general?
It's relating to a crime.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's actually in Texas, ironically enough.
Huh. So it does. I mean, and the crowdsourcing allows you to feel sort of closer to people who in the past might have just been readers.
Yes, and it also makes
them
accurate. Yeah, and it makes them active. And it like anything in life, when somebody gets active in something, there's more buy-in, I guess is the best way to put it.
Right. And for you, does it feel different, the work, this sort of collaborative work, which I assume is slightly different than when you were just writing about a crime on your own?
In a sense, like when you work, let's just say, like I worked in newspapers predominantly, you have an editor, you have other reporters, you have, you have a support team around you, especially if you're covering a tough story. And, there's nothing tougher than writing about, unsolved murders.
Right.
And so, it's more of a team effort. That's the way I would look at it. It's more of a team effort.
And I know there's no way to sort of judge this, to know, but from your experience, does it feel like it is any more helpful than traditional reporting might be in passively solving one of these really difficult cases, or helping solve it?
Well, and you know this, Sarah, there's automatically a reticence with law enforcement when you come in as a journalist working for a local newspaper or a statewide or national media company. Automatically, these red flags come out, these barriers get thrown up, because there's just that type of relationship between journalists and law enforcement. One thing I've noticed in this particular instance, like there was a family, we've been looking at a case in West Virginia, and the lead detective in that case, or he's a detective working for the prosecutor's office, he just gave us the case file a few weeks ago. And he met with us this last weekend. We went to West Virginia, and he spent every single day with us. We followed the path of this woman. It sounds crazy, and it was crazy to me, but she walked 13 miles from she was a caregiver for her grandmother, but they got into an argument, and so she wanted to walk up to the family farm, which was down a very rural area near Parkersburg, West Virginia. And so she walked 13 miles. And it was February 6th was the anniversary, and she walked all the way up to, and I'm telling you right now, Sarah, I could have never imagined, like when I read this at first, I'm like, there's no way she did this. There's no way she walked 13 miles in the dark. When there's no street lights, there's nothing. I mean, it's as rural as it gets. And but when we got the case file, there were five reports of people seeing her on that road. And I told Jennifer before we ever got the case file, I said, if there is a woman walking in the middle of nowhere and there's only 10 or 15 people on that road, there better be 5 or more reports in the case file where people said, hey, we did see this woman walking in the middle of the night, because it just didn't set well with me. And sure enough, when we got the case file, it had those reports were in there.
Huh. So in that sense, you feel like there might be instances where police are more trusting of you and Jennifer, or you and others, than when they would be if you were just a reporter reporting on it.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I haven't noticed that because there's another case that Jennifer and I had been talking about in Washington State, and in that case, the Attorney General's office they have somebody that they've assigned to this cold case that they want to look into it, and that person contacted us last week, and we have a Google Drive folder that we put information in, because people will call us or we'll talk to somebody, interview somebody, and they ask for access to that Google Drive. And so I can only take that as that they see value in what we're doing.
Right. Okay, so do you think there are any drawbacks to the sort of crowdsourcing approach to crimes? Is there anything that you guys are hesitant about or try to think about when you're approaching like a new case and using crowdsourcing?
I think I'm sure there will be at some point. I can't think of any example off the top of my head. Getting people from various backgrounds together, thinking about a case, it only helps. And here's the thing, like all of this stuff is done voluntarily. I mean, nobody. Right. There's no money component involved here. There's nothing. A lot of these people, it's. I don't want to say it's like a hobby or something like that. I don't know if I would call it that, but a lot of these people do it on their own free time, and so, and I know we had this event we went to Parkersburg this last weekend, and there was a lot of people there. Like their whole family showed up at this farm, and they just kept saying they were very, very grateful. And I told Jennifer at one point, I said, it is really hard. We were on this farm. This woman, they found her body in a cellar. And they don't know how she died, but the farm and the cellar had been set on fire, and the fire was so intense, and because of the way she was found in a root cellar, the way the root cellar was designed, it essentially turned into an oven, and she was basically cremated. Oh, gosh. And we were sitting there, and I was looking around at all these people. It was kind of a nice day, sunny day, and there were probably 20, 30 people up there, and I told Jennifer, I said, I can't believe that somebody sent us this case, a family member, and here we are. All these people are here now, and we've had an arson expert. I've got a good friend of mine who he helps run a fire science academy, and so he is gracious with his expertise and time. He'll examine pictures, and he's actually working with the detective in that case. They've been on the phone probably half a dozen times talking about different things. And so, it's kind of rewarding in a way, I don't know that we'll ever figure out who killed that woman, but at least we're trying to help.
Okay. So then what about Deborah Sue? I know you guys, I think you heard about it at the Crime Con.
Yes.
In 2021. And what is it that attracted you to that case?
Well, there were several cases that what happened is in Rebecca's case, it was that was in limbo because William had confessed and he had been charged, and so we were waiting for the trial. And just to be honest with you, I don't think Jennifer and I realized how much time we spent obsessing over her case, because that was the first murder case I ever covered, and I got to know her dad very well, Dr. Larry Gould, in that case. And it just always bothered me. I still have her missing poster in my house, and every job I ever had, every place I ever went, I kept her missing poster with me, and I always hoped it would get solved. And I didn't know, it actually turned out to be probably one of the craziest cases I've ever covered, because that guy is now potentially a serial killer, and he's confessed to 5 other murders now, and so the FBI is probably about to get involved in that. But anyway, so we were at CrimeCon, and we had a lot of families approach us. I mean, they're begging. There's a real crisis in this country. There's almost 300,000 unsolved murders now, and there are people begging for help, and law enforcement doesn't have the resources. Many of the smaller agencies don't have the expertise to handle these cold cases. Like for instance, in Parkersburg, they've never had an arson expert look into Judy's case ever, because they can't afford it. I mean, and I even when I asked my friend Alan to do it, I said, listen, this is just a volunteer thing. I mean, and he said, I'm more than happy to do it. So, and he's actually looked at a couple of other cases too. So, Debbie's case, we tried to come up with some criteria, because unfortunately there are some cases that can never be solved, and that's just the reality of it. So we try to pick out a case where we think we might be able to help, like through behavioral analysis, like if the killer, if we can ferret out some behavior aspects to it. And so we looked at Debbie's case, like kind of, did a flyby on it. We read about it, and Liz, her half-sister, had approached a friend of ours, who is actually, the friend is from Lubbock, at CrimeCon, and she had approached her and asked, I'm not sure exactly what the conversation was, but she approached her, they started talking about the case, and so the case was brought to us, and we had about probably 2 or 3 that we were vetting at the time. And the thing that intrigued us about Debbie's case was there was a lot of behavioral aspects we thought were, something that we could probably help and work on. And so, and Liz at the time seemed very willing to work with us. So we thought, okay, let's give this one a go. And the funny thing is that Jennifer, I'm sure I mentioned to her that I was born in Lubbock at some point before this, but she didn't know it. And I said, well, just so you know, I was born in Lubbock.
Huh. So did that feel, for you, did that feel like a reason, or was it just like a coincidence?
To be honest with you, it was a coincidence. But then I started talking to my mom and dad, and I said, so do you guys remember this murder, the murder of Deborah Sue Williamson? And my dad was like, oh yeah. He goes, I remember that, because my dad was around her age. So yeah, so he might have been like, they might have been the same age, because Debbie was 18, but I think my dad was like maybe a junior. He hadn't quite graduated yet. So it was something, he was a teenager when this happened, and so.
Wow. So did you, when you went back to investigate the case, do you have still family there? Was there anybody that you saw?
Oh yeah, I had family. Yeah, okay. I have family there. Yeah. Huh. Yeah, my dad still lives there.
Oh, your dad still lives there in Lubbock?
Yeah. He's lived in Lubbock his whole life. Yeah.
Oh wow. Okay, and then tell me about your impressions of Liz at first. You said she was interested and willing to work with you all. What was your impression of her?
We spent many hours on the phone with her. She was fairly knowledgeable about the case, and dealing with family members of murder victims is really tough. Yeah. It's a tough thing, and I've done it a lot. And there's a stress component that goes into families when someone's murdered, and there's like wide-ranging reactions to things. Some family members really want people looking into their loved one's case. Some of them don't, and because it's like, I don't know if they feel like it's personally intrusive. I don't know, but it's just a fine line that you have to, with some family. And there's dynamics within the families, because there's like there might be a sister who doesn't like another sister, and then it turns into this thing, or a sibling, or not a sibling, but like a child doesn't get along with their parent, and sometimes you get thrown in the middle of it, and you're like, what do I do?
Mm-hmm. So when you first met Liz, was that something that you were already wary of or aware of?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a journalist. I mean, I'm wary
Yeah.
of everything. I mean, I'm wary about everybody and their intentions. I mean, that's kind of why when you called me out or sent me the email, I was like, I wanted to see what this was going to be about first because, um, you know, I, I'm just a journalist. I'm just trying to write stories and do the right thing as best as I see it. And sometimes you can't make anybody happy.
Do you think of yourself though as just a journalist now, even with the sort of investigative work?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's what I do for a living.
Uh,
I mean,
Yeah. Okay.
that's my everyday job, and
Right.
I love it. I love being an investigative journalist. It's kind of one of those things. People ask me all the time, like, man, you spend a lot of hours working on these other things, that are not a part of your job. You don't get paid for them, and I'm just like, well, when I covered like West Memphis 3, I mean, I if you do it right, you're going to spend many many hours, on your own time because it's just something you love to do.
Right. Um. Okay. So Liz, I mean, I know sometimes it's hard when you've known somebody over a long period of time. Well, not long period, but like a little over a year. But when you first met her, what was your impression of her?
She was just a woman who seemingly wanted to find justice for her loved one. I mean, there's a lot of them out there. I mean, I had the same impression about her as I had about a lot of other people, other family members I had met of other murder victims. I mean, they're sad and they're frustrated, and there's, especially with the case in Debbie's, that's as old as Debbie's. There's like a hopelessness for a lot of those people, and yeah, I feel bad for them.
Yep. Had you guys seen the Confession Killer at that point when you got involved in her case about Henry Lee Lucas?
The funny thing is, I had, but I didn't even remember Debbie's case being a part of it till Liz brought it up.
Uh-huh. Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, because I mean, I watch a lot of documentaries, but no,
Hmm.
I did not remember it. I didn't remember specifically. I knew it was about Henry Lee Lucas, but I didn't remember Debbie's case specifically at all. And then Liz brought it up, and I was like, okay.
Um, okay, and so then what do you see as like when you all began to have, or maybe you specifically began to have problems with Liz, or what became a sort of difficulty in that relationship?
Um, well, the thing about it is, the thing about dealing with some family members in some of these cases is they want to be in control of all the narratives. And I had a lengthy conversation with Liz one time, and I told her, I said, "Listen, at some point, this is going to go. That if there's enough media attention brought to this case, because and I was very honest with her from the beginning. I said the only way that I've seen, and maybe there's another way to do it, but the only way that I've seen is if you can possibly get justice for Debbie is you need a lot of media scrutiny. You need that, just every day. If you can just generate enough media attention, it could maybe force the hand of law enforcement. I mean, obviously, in the cases I've been involved with for years, that's exactly what happened. Like West Memphis 3, it just got to the point where the public, the scrutiny was so much that the powers that be had to do something. And so I told her that. I said, but here's the side effect of that: you're going to lose control of what's said and about this case. And I think that, and she swore to, or she said to me, she said, hey, I have no problem with that, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, okay, well, I mean, we'll see. I mean, people say, they say they don't have a problem with it till it starts happening. You know what I mean?
Hmm. And have you seen that with other people as well? That sort of,
Oh, yeah.
um,
Oh, yeah.
yeah. Okay, so do you remember when you had that conversation with her? Was it when you started working on the case, or once you guys were already working on it? Or?
We had that conversation in the parking lot of the hotel that she was staying at with Jennifer and her half sister Paula on August 23rd, 2021.
Okay. So when you guys flew out there to sort of, okay. Okay, well, so you had that conversation, but then she said, yeah, it's totally fine. So when did you start to see like a breakdown or wonder if it wasn't actually fine with her?
I think she sent me a text message. I had done a podcast, and we were going over the case, and this was a few months later, and she sent me a text, and the text message, she said she was super pissed at me because I had used the full name of a person who had been interviewed by police, and she didn't want this person's name. And I explained to her before, I'm a journalist. I don't use anonymous names. I don't do that. I use the person. Like you know what I'm saying. Like in reporting, you can't do that. I mean, and besides the fact, he was just a person in the case file. The same person that she told me when I asked, because I did ask her, I said, who do you think killed your sister? And she said this was the person she thought killed her sister.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't respond to the text message because I was like, okay, I'm not. And then she told Jennifer a few weeks later, she said, well, I got to find a way to apologize to George for sending that text.
Huh. Okay. So then you figured things were okay?
Yeah.
Or maybe okay. Okay.
Yeah.
So then when in your mind was there an actual break?
There was an actual break, and again, I'll be honest with you, I don't really feel comfortable talking about it because like even in the book that we wrote, we didn't detail any of it because it wasn't important. Because the only part that was important to me was that we were trying to get justice for Deborah Sue, and so I didn't. But anyway, the break came. We spoke at CrimeCon in 2021. Well, we had some connection there, and I'm not sure who contacted us, but CrimeCon does what they call a cold case club, and it's just like I don't even know how to describe it. It's kind of like it's like a Zoom meeting for all their cold case club members, and they've got, I don't know, 1,000 members or whatever. And they had approached us and said, hey, would you guys want to do like a series of, like I guess the only way I can describe it is like shows where we would like bring in an expert to talk about Debbie's case, and we would go over different aspects of it. And of course we agreed to do it, and again, we weren't paid for it. And so we spent a lot of time working with the producer and setting up the shows. Well, one part of that was Jennifer gave the producer, she's a former journalist, she was a TV anchor, or TV reporter at least. She gave her the case file, and Liz got mad about it. I'm not really sure why, because those are public records. And so she gave her, because she had to do the background, obviously to set up the guests and to do all this other stuff. And Liz agreed to be one of the guests. And so then Liz started asking some of the people who were supposed to come on to the show not to come on. And I couldn't believe it. I was like, what are you doing? And after she did that, and we've got all the emails and text messages from the people that she asked not to come on, after that, she agreed to go on the show. And I was like, what? I mean, and at that point I was like, I mean, I'm doing all this work. I mean, like, what's the point?
Mm-hmm. So you felt like did you feel at that point like just giving up on the case altogether, or what was your thought as far as how to handle that?
I mean, at that point, we had interviewed just about every living person who had been interviewed by the police at that point from back in 1975. So we had a case file that was 2 or 3 times bigger than the Lubbock PD's case file, and we gave all that to them. Like, we put it on a drive, and we Sergeant Anderson, or I don't know if he's Sergeant or Lieutenant Anderson now, but he's the head of the CID division for Lubbock. We gave him all the interviews we had done.
Mm-hmm. So I mean, obviously, because I've interviewed Liz, and I know that what seems to be her contention is that she had some sort of agreement from you all that you wouldn't share the case file with anyone.
That absolutely is not, that is absolutely not true from me at all. I would have never agreed to that under any circumstance. I'm a journalist, and I would never have agreed to, and tell her to produce any type of proof that that's the case, because that's not true.
And you say, "What? Because I'm a journalist," because you wouldn't sort of be beholden to any sort of agreements before you started writing about the case.
No, yeah. I would never do that. No, that is not. I mean, you've done this a long time too. You can't. I mean, I couldn't agree to that. I wouldn't have. I would have told her flat out, no, I'm not agreeing to that. And it doesn't. And here's the thing, it doesn't matter. Those are public documents. She doesn't own them. They're owned by the public.
Well, I mean, at that point, the public couldn't access them, right? Because the police wouldn't give them, they wouldn't release them to the public. They should be public documents, but
they are public. The police, if the police can choose to release them or not, which they did release them to Bob Lemons, her dad. But if I had a document leaked to me from a case file, which has happened to me many times, and I report on it, I mean, that happens every day in this country. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I mean, that, and again, that's why I would never agree to that. You know what I mean? I had a case one time where I had an entire case file leaked to me from someone within an organization. It was a murder case, and this was many years ago, and I wrote a story about it because the prosecutor wasn't moving with murder charges on this person, and the prosecutor wanted to know where I got the case file from, and I said, sorry, I'm not going to tell you, because that's,
right.
I don't have to. I mean, that's how our system works.
Mm-hmm. And when you all have a case file, and you're working on one of these other cases, do you talk to the police about, what information you might release or might not release, or do you all just make that judgment yourself as far as like what's makes sense to release and what doesn't make sense to release?
I mean, we will talk to the police about what to release or what not to release, for sure. I guess that is maybe a little bit of a difference between me being a journalist and then us doing this other type of work, is that, as a journalist, I make the call from a news perspective, with my editor and stuff like that. We sit down and say, okay, and I take that back. Sometimes when I've gotten something leaked to me, I will call the detective or someone like that and say, hey, we've got this sensitive stuff, what do you want to do with it? And here's the thing, in this case, Sergeant Anderson he doesn't think there's anything of value in that old case file anyway.
He told you that?
Absolutely. I mean, have you read it?
No, I've because I'm focusing on the this idea of sort of the search itself, and because Liz is clearly sensitive about that, I've decided not to even go there, because for me those details, this story is not about Debbie's. It's about the search for Debbie's case, but it's not about the details of Debbie's case. You guys have done a very good job covering that. So in some ways, yeah, I don't need to or want to see the case file.
Oh, okay. I mean,
so after this break with Liz, so you said it affected the people that were going to go on the CrowdCon show. Mm-hmm. Were you all able to continue that, or did you have to stop?
No,
the show itself?
No, they had to stop. The people at CrimeCon, from the very higher ups. In fact, we were supposed to do a presentation on Debbie's case at CrimeCon in Las Vegas, and I got a call one morning, and they said that the relationship with Liz was too toxic, and they just couldn't continue. And I said, I understand.
And so, what was your reaction to that?
I mean, I was disappointed, because we'd put in a lot of work. We had already, I mean, because a presentation like that, you have to start putting it together months beforehand. And so
Right.
we already had a rough draft done. We'd already spent a lot of time, and you know, it was tough. I mean, because the thing about CrimeCon is there's a lot of like world renowned experts who show up there. You know that. I mean,
Hmm.
and it's just an opportunity. You present a case like that at a conference like that, and you just don't ever know what type of resources might come out of that. You just don't know. I mean, it's just another platform to.
Right.
I mean,
So did you think that the Deborah Sue case was solvable?
I did, and I still do. Um, yeah, I really do. I think that there's one or two things out there that, I mean, you read the book, so
Mhm.
yeah, I mean, I do.
But what do you think it would just require media pressure at this point, or what do you think it would require?
I think it would probably require someone in the Lubbock PD, in their CID division, just somebody really taking an active, like they would just start fresh, look at the case, and say, okay, let's play these. Let's look at the probabilities of each of the people of interest, and let's just go talk to them, do interviews with them, and see if we can't somehow crack this case. I I have a suspicion that most of the evidence in the case has been lost, and
Hmm.
so there's not going to be, like, I could be wrong. I hope I am wrong. I hope there is some major piece of like DNA evidence that gets unraveled or uncovered. I don't know what word you would use, and maybe they can put this together. I think if they found her pants, because her killer touched her pants, and I know Jared Bradley at MVAC DNA testing. He's the CEO there. I've talked to him extensively about some of these cases, and he told me, that if that those pants would be a great place to collect DNA. So if they had like touch DNA that maybe they couldn't test even just a few
Hmm.
years ago, but they could test now. So potentially, if they're if they could find that evidence, then yeah.
But so, and then why do you think you guys decided ultimately to step away from the case entirely?
I mean, we're not really doing anything with it anymore. Um,
Hmm.
there's nothing we can do. I mean,
Right.
at this point, it's up to the police department. I mean, it's their. We don't solve. I mean, I guess I should have corrected one thing you said earlier. We don't solve cases.
Right.
We just study them. I mean, and
Right.
that's and oh, and I apologize. There's some ladies walking by. I'm actually sitting in the. I'm at the gym. I'm actually in a side room by the tennis courts because I have a couple of dogs, and I really hate crating them because I know the vet says it's good for them that they need to do it, but
Yeah.
I just can't stand it. So I try to multitask when I can.
That's smart.
Yeah,
I'm impressed. I have a dog as well, and yeah, every time I have to board her, she's really pathetic when I pick her back up. So yeah,
yeah.
I totally get it. Um, no, I didn't mean to say that you guys solved cases. I know that you said I did, but that you're pushing for them being solved.
Hmm.
But I just wondered if you would you characterize it as you sort of stopping working on the case because of the break with Liz, or is it just that you all did everything you could do and there's nothing else to do anymore?
Yeah, I mean that there was really nothing else to do. I mean, we had interviewed every single person in the case that we
Hmm.
could get to. I mean, a couple people wouldn't agree to do interviews. Um, and again, we shared
Right.
all that with Liz. She didn't interview anybody or go out or talk to these people. I mean, we did, and we did
Hmm.
it, with her blessing. And so we went and interviewed all these people, and we gave her full access to all those interviews. I sat in a room and she listened to every one of them, and I asked her what she thought about it, and we recorded what she said. I mean, and
Hmm.
you know, she was on all of our podcasts that we did about it. She actually
Hmm.
did the Crime Con show. She did an episode of it. Um,
Hmm.
I think the one thing that she did that probably crossed the line for me the most is the widower in the case, Doug. She asked him not to go on that show. And I had been
Hmm.
to Doug's house. I live about an hour and 15 minutes from Doug. And I ate dinner with him after she asked him not to go on. He said, he goes, I didn't know what to do because she asked me not to
Mm,
go on the show. And I
mm,
said, I just told him, I said, I understand. He didn't want to get into conflict with Debbie's sister. And
mm,
I mean, we ate dinner with him, and I gave him a hug. I said, I understand.
mm. But that felt like it crossed the line because it felt like she was trying to impede the investigation itself, or what felt like it crossed the line there?
It's just that the only hope that you would have of solving a case this old is that
Mm-hmm.
you have to have, there has to be some type of attention paid to the case, and I don't care what it
Mm-hmm.
is, whether it be through traditional media, whether it's social media. If there's no attention paid to the case, then it's just going to die. It's just going to go away, and that's
Mm-hmm.
just the reality of it. And um, asking Doug not to go on that show, I just, what was the purpose in her asking him not to go on the show?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, ask yourself that question. Why would she do that?
Well, what do you think? Because I mean, yeah, I was actually to ask you, like, if even if what she did is frustrating, if you could understand
I no, that's
the
why I'm at.
mindset of a sort of a family of a victim, right? Like, I guess I'm wondering what you make of it. Why you think she would have done that?
Um, I don't know. I mean, that's it. Just, I was shocked. I couldn't fathom it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, well, I mean, I'm asking you, what would you have thought about that?
I don't know. I mean, it seems like people that are hurt, and they're dealing with hurt, they do things that don't seem sensical all the time. So, um, and you probably know this working on stories. Like sometimes people change their mind completely, and it's not always clear what's going on to it. But when they've suffered trauma or have hurt,
Yeah, I mean, or why
sometimes
would?
people do things that don't seem explainable. I know that one thing I was going to ask you about was the one thing that Liz did say that she was upset about. I wondered about this was that she said that you all had removed her from her sister's Facebook page.
That's a lie. That is not true. We formed that
No.
Facebook page and we allowed her to be an administrator on it. But then we did remove her as an administrator. We did do that, but that is a lie that she keeps telling, and it is absolutely not true.
So she's not removed from the page. She was just not an administrator anymore.
At one point, we did remove her because just dealing with her was just too toxic. It's not her page. I mean, we formed the page. It's our
Mm-hmm.
page. Yeah, that's a lie. She has told people that, and it's just not true.
And so, but why do you think you removed her? Was it before or after this thing with her asking Doug not to be on the show?
I would have to go back and look, but it was around the same time.
Okay. So, do you think from that experience with Liz, are there things that you guys are more wary of or aware of going forward in these new cases that you're working on? As far as
Yeah, we actually have had we have a legal agreement that people have to sign for us to get involved in a case from now on because of what she did.
huh? And what does it say? The agreement.
The agreement. Well, I mean, to be honest with you, if I had it in front of me, I could probably speak to it better. I haven't seen it in a while, but it's just
Mm-hmm.
protection for us because we can't. I mean, we drove or not drove, but we went to Lubbock multiple times. I spent a lot of my
Mm-hmm.
own free time, energy, And here's the thing: you're going after someone who hasn't been caught killing a woman for 47 years.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of dangerous.
Right.
Just on the outset, it's a dangerous thing.
Mm-hmm.
And we spent a lot of time, a lot of money, a lot of effort. A lot of other people did the exact same thing, and you can't go to those extremes of effort to have it all, and I don't even know what the word is, sabotaged by somebody, and I don't even know what her agenda is with us. I mean, the only thing that I ever hear when people say that she's mad at us or whatever is that we kicked her off of a Facebook page. And I'm just like, really?
Well, I think that the thing about the case file that seems to be the thing that she's.
I never agreed
Um,
to. I never. This is what. And when you're doing your story, she
mhm.
I guarantee you there's nothing she can show that says George Jared signed some agreement saying he would never do that, because I never did, and I wouldn't have.
Mm-hmm.
So that's
Do
not
you think
true.
there's any chance that Jennifer did?
No, I mean, we didn't sign anything. We wouldn't. I would.
No, but I mean, any chance that Jennifer agreed not to share the case file?
I don't even see what. I don't know. I mean, that's.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I mean, but at the end of the day, I don't even know what that matters anyway, because they're public documents. Liz Flats doesn't own those documents. She can't.
Mm-hmm.
She can't. She has no they're not proprietary. She doesn't own them.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the Lubbock PD
Well,
tomorrow.
I mean, I think what she feels is that you guys wouldn't have had them if she didn't share them. That seems to be her feeling. If you're trying to get a sense of like where she's coming from, that's what she seems to say, is that they're public, yes, but obviously wouldn't have had access to them if she didn't share them.
Well, I mean, the case we've got now, the agency gave us the
Mm-hmm.
entire case file. I've been given many case files by agencies through the years as a journalist. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
so to say that we wouldn't have ever gotten access to them, I mean, yeah, it's possible, but I mean, hypothetically, we could have, started working with the Lubbock Police Department like we're working with the Parkersburg Police Department. And
Mm-hmm.
so, I mean, to me, I don't even know what the relevancy of that is, because we never signed anything. So it's just,
Mm-hmm.
she just didn't want us to do it. I mean, I don't, and she went, here's the thing. So she doesn't want those documents released to the Cold Case Club. After they're released to the Cold Case Club, she goes on that show.
Mm-hmm.
Do you not see what I'm saying there? I mean,
So what do you make of that? Like, why do you think she would go on after not wanting them to be released?
right.
I'm wondering, like, what do you think her motivation is?
I don't know. I mean, I think it speaks for itself. I mean, she said she was mad that those documents were shared with the producer of that show, and then she went on the same show.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't have. I mean, I don't think I have to say it. It just speaks for itself.
I'm actually not sure what you're implying.
I mean, well, okay, if she was so, like Sarah, if she was so outraged by this and it hurt her so deeply, then why did she go on the show?
People are complex people, but I mean, I don't think that, because then you think she's still genuinely mad now, right? I mean, what would explain her being upset now?
I don't know. I mean, I haven't talked to her in, gosh, I mean, it's been almost probably a year and a half. I mean, and
She said she tried to reach out to you all via email to talk, and that Jennifer said she didn't have time.
no, I'll tell you what happened. No, I can tell you that, and we've got all the emails to show that. She wouldn't. Okay, so she was supposed to be on the second show, and Jennifer and I were coordinating it, and she wasn't communicating with us at all. Like, we would text her, email her, she wouldn't communicate. Well, and finally we told her a couple days before, listen, if you're not going to communicate with us, and I don't know the exact words we used, we're going to have to go to a plan B, because she wasn't going to show. And so then she said, and again, I mean, I understand that people have, I mean, you're talking about her having this complexity because she's her sister got murdered in 1975. I understand that, and then trying to explain away all of her actions through, well, people are complicated and all this other stuff. But
Right.
we also, I have a life too, and I can't, I mean, we're trying to plan this show, and she's not communicating with us at all. And then all of a sudden, at the last second, like literally an hour before we're supposed to do the show, she finally starts communicating and says, "Okay, I'm ready to do it." And it's like, what? And we're like, no, we already came up with a whole new game plan. There's no way you can't just change something like that on the fly an hour out. And here's the thing: she wasn't on that show, and she got in the queue because you could like ask questions and do all this other stuff. And she got in the queue, and she started like just making all these just random statements in there, and people were like, "What is?" I mean, people were texting me like, "What is she talking about?" And then 2 days later, she's on. To try to appease her, they put her on that show 2 days later because that's what she wanted to do. She didn't want Doug on the show, but she wanted her to be on the show.
So it was after that she was on the show.
Yeah.
But not with you guys? They just did that through CrimeCon? Or?
No, the same producer that she was mad that got the case file was the person who interviewed her for the show.
But and at that point, were you just not talking to her because you were upset about that last minute change? Or did it seem like at that point?
No, at that point I hadn't.
Might work things out.
No, at that point I hadn't talked to her in a while. Just because, I mean, I'm not going to get into the whole purpose of being involved in Debbie's case was not to get into some kind of conflict with her sister. I mean, that was not the purpose. The purpose was to try to help find or figure out who killed her. And, I don't have time in my life to be getting involved in these. Nobody does. And I don't even know what it is. I don't even know where it's coming from. I mean, the two things that, like in this whole conversation you and I have had, the two things that she's mad about is that public documents that don't belong to her, she has no proprietary value over, and there was no signed agreement that we wouldn't use them in any other way, that they were given to a producer on a show that she gladly and forced herself to appear on, and we kicked her off a Facebook page. So
does it ever make you want to like stop doing this work?
Oh yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And why haven't you?
Yeah. I mean, a TV station in Lubbock, they interviewed us. The reporter called us and she wanted to interview us, and we went to the studio and did the interview because we were in Lubbock for a few days in March. And the reporter, hours before this piece was going to go out, was texting me, asking me for pictures, and I was speaking at a college before a bunch of college students, a bunch of journalism students, and I said, well, as soon as I get out, I'll try to get you those pictures. And I couldn't get to them in time. Well, then the piece came out, and there was not one word about Debbie's case or us. It was all about Liz being mad that she got kicked off a Facebook page.
Yeah, I saw that.
And I literally called up the station manager and the newsroom director, and I was on the phone with them for 2 hours. I said, how in the world is this a news story? Someone gets kicked off a Facebook page?
So you bring that, because I said, does this ever make you want to stop? And you bring that up. Is that a moment where you felt like you wanted to stop doing this kind of work?
Yeah. I mean, if I had one more hit piece done on me, I probably would, because I'm just tired of it. That's not... It's not work. It's like, I don't know, like, how, I don't even know how to say it. It's like, I don't need this in my life if I'm going to have to be dealing with stuff like this. I mean, like, the vast majority of this interview has been over this thing with Liz, and I don't, you're a journalist, you get what I'm saying. This shouldn't, like, from my perspective, it shouldn't even be about that.
I mean, I think the problem with these stories, and this is what I'm sort of interested in, is that like when we're moving towards this world in which like the true crime is crowdsourced, what we have is just to have so much more public access and like buy-in to the stories themselves, and so that it seems like the sort of emotional responses on people like Liz is probably much stronger than it would have been in the past, What I get from talking to her is this idea of like having, people talking about her online, that feels really bad, which wouldn't have happened in like our early days of journalism where we where we were, there was always comments. There was like the comments section where people said nasty things. But social media does sort of seem to be a different sort of world.
Yeah, but there's no controlling that. People say what they're going to say. People say terrible, untrue things about me all the time on social media, and there's nothing you can do, and I just don't pay attention to it. I just don't care. It's but I don't. It's like I'm not getting paid to do this, so why would I put myself in this position? If I'm just going to get attacked for no reason when. She got kicked off a Facebook page, and some public documents that she doesn't own or have proprietary ownership of were shared.
Yeah.
I mean,
So
that's
why do
it.
you stay then? I mean, I think if it is difficult, or it has been difficult in that case at least, why do you think you keep doing it?
Um, because I've been around some of these like family members. It does bother me when I see how upset they are.
Yeah.
Like it's a tough thing. I mean, I mean, you get a call like and somebody's missing, and then you go out there and their families are disoriented. They don't know anything. They don't know how to talk to the police. They don't know how to interact with the media. They don't know anything because they've never had to deal with something like that. And then when their loved
Right.
one is found and you see them, I mean, I guess if you didn't have a soul, it wouldn't bother you, but I do.
Right. So it's that idea of still wanting to make a difference in those cases.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, George. And just, you weren't implying that this would be a piece, but obviously you know me as a journalist, and the New York Times has an extensive fact checking sort of process. So when the article does come out, I mean, I'll probably have some questions anyways between then and now, but the fact checkers always reach out and go over like every single tiny little thing. So um, just know that
Okay.
there will be a thorough sort of fact checking and vetting process for a story like this.
Yeah, well, if you need any of the emails where she asked that the experts don't show up on that show, I mean, we can provide them.
Yeah. No, if anything you have would be really helpful. So yeah, if you could forward them just that email that I sent you, that would be great.
Okay. I mean,
Those things.
honestly, I
Go ahead.
wasn't going to do this interview, but I just was like, I'm tired of this. It's like it's just not true, and I don't.
Mm-hmm.
There's a part of like something I've learned in this is that you know there are people out there, even if you are connected to the victim of a murder, that doesn't mean you always have good intentions.
Right.
And I just, especially when it comes to Liz, I don't understand how in the world she gets people to buy into these things, and I just don't understand it. Like, she lies and says, like she said, we kicked her off her own Facebook page. Well, first of all, how in the world would we have done that?
Mm-hmm.
How can you kick somebody off their own Facebook page? Because it's a lie. It's not
Mm-hmm.
true. I mean, and as far as the documents go, um, where's the agreement? I never agreed to nothing. So,
Mm-hmm. Who did you all get the agreement you have now with new family members? Did you get somebody like a lawyer to draw them up, or did you just draw up a sort of informal agreement, or what did you all do?
we have a. I'll just say this: we have a legally binding agreement with people from now on, and that's
Hmm.
just the way. Because again, I cannot tell you how much time I've had to waste because of Liz's antics. You know, spending hours on the phone with the station manager and the newsroom director, over, and you saw the story. I mean, and I've got friends all over the country that are in the journalism business, and I sent it to every one of them. I said, where's the news plug in this story? And not one of them could find one. It was just a sensationalized piece where it seemed, oh, this, it was a half sister of a murder victim is got kicked off a Facebook page, and I'm just sitting there going, how is that a news story?
Mm-hmm. So the legally binding agreement does it say that the person can't like interfere or try to sort of sabotage the case, or what is it?
Um,
How would it prevent from happening with Liz happening again?
to be honest with you, I'd have to look at it again. I don't remember all of the ins and outs of it, but um, you know, um, and especially, Jennifer is a professor at American Military University, AMU,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
there's just, this whole episode has just been, it's been problematic for everybody involved.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I've never in my life, I couldn't have imagined that this would turn out this way.
Hmm. So you're trying to prevent it ever happening again. Is what I
Yeah,
understand. Yeah.
yeah. I mean,
Um,
it's just like
yeah.
I can't believe I'm even having this conversation with you about this right now. You know what I mean? It's just like, what are we talking about here? We're talking about a half century old case, nearly. And the
Hmm.
focus of anything about Debbie's case should be trying to find justice for her. It shouldn't be about like a George Jared or a Jennifer Bucholtz or a Liz Flats. I mean, if we had done something, if we had signed an agreement with her, like
Hmm.
saying we wouldn't have released these documents, and I'd say, okay, well, maybe there's something to that. But I never signed
Hmm.
anything. I mean, there's no agreement. I mean,
Hmm.
I don't know how that's a story.
And so I wrote to Jennifer too. Do you have any sense? You said you didn't know if you wanted to do an interview, but you decided to, obviously. But do you know if Jennifer plans to talk to me or what her sort of feeling is on that?
My guess, which actually Jennifer and I were talking yesterday, we didn't talk about this much. It was brought up for briefly, but my guess is that Jennifer probably won't talk. Um,
Hmm.
she she takes these things a little more. She was very. It was very emotional for her,
Hmm.
because she got close to Liz for a while, and of course, me, I'm a journalist, so I'm a little wary and
Hmm.
skeptical. You know that. I mean, you are. I mean, you
Yeah.
know that that's just the way it goes. Um, and this was devastating for her when this all went
Hmm.
down. Um,
Okay.
so I don't know if she will or not. I mean, that's obviously up to her.
Okay.
Um,
Well, I'll check in. And I mean, either way, I'll have to reach out and sort of fact check things with her. But I'll check in again in a little bit. But I get that. I mean, I think that Liz also said that she felt close to Jennifer.
yeah.
And yeah, I think when you're a journalist, you do just sort of a different approach to people. There's a little more distance. Um, okay. Well, yeah, send me anything that you think is relevant. This is not, as I said, the story is about sort of the long lifeline of this case itself, and trying to sort of understand trends in true crime, and like, part of it will be about the Henry Lee Lucas case. So this is not a story that is about um, people upset over the Facebook page. But my guess
Okay.
is that will my guess is that will probably be. I mean, I write these very long stories, like these, 9,000 word stories. So but the point of the story is not about beefs about Facebook page. It's about trying to sort of understand the changing face of true crime. And I teach at a university as well, and so I just last semester taught a true crime class. Um, so some of it is about that, like what students think, how people are sort of thinking about how to think about true crime now that it's become so accessible,
Mm-hmm.
right? And it's become something that, like, there's now, did you see that new, like, there's like almost like a social media page for like true crime followers? I can't remember what it's called, but it just seems like it's definitely become something that's like much more a part of people's everyday lives.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely true. I mean, I ended up speaking at CrimeCon on the West Memphis 3 case,
Hmm.
and I interviewed stepdad that a lot of people think was involved, and so I ended up
Hmm.
going there, and the fervor there for true crime, it's unbelievable to me.
Yeah.
I was talking to the CEO at CrimeCon the last morning I was there, and him and I were just chatting because it was in Las Vegas and the NFL draft was going on, and I felt busier than like I mean I was in Vegas for 5 days. I don't gamble or do anything like that. I mean I'm just but anyway I've been to Vegas before, and it just felt busier and more active. And he told me they were just turning down. He didn't know how many people because they would just walk by and want to get tickets to get in, and they were sold out. I mean they just couldn't let anybody else
Yeah.
in, and
Wow.
it just seems to be getting, I don't want to use the term not worse, it's growing. And
Hmm.
like me, I mean, like I watch some true crime documentaries and stuff like that, but reporting on it and being in the middle of it all the time, I like to watch other things, I guess is what I'm trying to say if I have to preference.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. You probably have your fill. But yeah, there definitely is a huge fan base for it. Or I don't know if fan base is the right word, but there's definitely a lot of people that are very interested in being part of possibly the resolution of a cold case in particular.
Yeah. I mean, in that Rebecca Gould murder case, I mean, that guy was on our page for a year, and he never would have got caught if he didn't confess.
Mm-hmm. Well, good luck with your current cases. Um, when you do, if there is any like significant movement in them, also email me about that. But otherwise, I'll check back in if I have any specific questions. And then when the story's getting ready to go to press, the fact checkers will also check back in.
Okay.
Thank you, George.
Sarah, you're very welcome. I hope you have Are you in Arizona now?
Yeah. I'm here.
Yeah, I actually do remember when those accusations were made against you, those false ones.
Yeah.
I remember that. Yeah, that was insane. I've actually, and I'm pretty sure I'm right about this. I actually talked about that. I gave a presentation at a college, and I'm pretty sure because I have brought up like false, like I talk a lot about false confession and false accusation because it's
right.
those are two really big problems we have in our country, and
yeah.
So anyway, when I of course I looked you up obviously when you sent the email, and immediately when I saw that I was like, I remember that. So anyway.
I know it's one of those things you don't really expect to happen to you, but it is a moment when you're glad to be a writer, because I think that there's a way you can make sense of it. Otherwise, you just sort of I can't imagine if that had happened to me and I just had to go on with my life. So
yeah,
at least we were able to like catch the guy, because otherwise, after that story came out, I heard from so many people with similar stories. Not obviously not the same, but it's just so much harder to actually be able to prove, that what you think is happening to you is actually happening. So we're very lucky in that way. Although it was very expensive. That's the thing. You have to get a lawyer to do those things, but yeah.
Yeah. No, anyway. It's not even to that level, but I had a hit piece done on me over kicking a chick off a Facebook page, so.
Yeah, I know. I think that was an interesting thing, hearing from people in like just such a wide range of experiences. But this experience of feeling like somebody sort of hijacked your narrative of yourself,
Yeah, and especially in your case, that is the thing about it is you can't. That is such a damaging accusation.
Yeah.
That.
Yeah.
I mean. And I've actually had that. There's like a moral question I had when I was in the newspaper business. When somebody's charged with something like that, like in a criminal sense, and you put them on the front page, and then they don't get convicted, and it's like a little box on the second page when you say, hey, they didn't get convicted of it. Because I had a guy one time who had been charged with 3 counts of sexual assault, and he was not. He was exonerated, went to trial, exonerated. And he was furious, and he called me, and I was like, you know what? I said, you're not making bad points here. I mean, because we literally ran like a tiny, 6-inch story on the second page, and he was furious, and I said, I kind of understand that.
Yeah, I do too. It just doesn't it doesn't seem as sexy to editors or to readers. Like they just don't care. So no, it's I think it's really a difficult issue. Talking about false accusations in general is just, I had people accuse me of being sort of anti-feminist. So I think that there's a lot of black and white thinking about like the things we report on. But I've always been interested in those stories, and like that. It's not, that it's not as clear as people think that it is. I think sort of muddying that up is helpful, although readers don't always like that. But thank you for saying that about the story. I appreciate it. I'm glad it's over.
I would imagine.
Well, you have a good Friday, and give my regards to Jennifer. Tell her that if she wants to talk off the record, about what she'd feel comfortable talking about, I'm also open to that. And I can email her and say the same thing.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, okay. I will definitely pass that message along to her.
I appreciate it. Have a good day.
Sarah, have a wonderful day yourself.
Bye.
Bye-bye.